Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Satlin. How's it going, man?
Remember a few podcast episodes ago when we said you can't have something nice in Philly without something else in Philly completely crashing and burning? Well, as everyone knows, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, right? Big deal for Philadelphia. Congratulations to Philadelphia. I love the Eagles. Love my Steelers more, but we'll always support the Eagles when they're not playing the Steelers. Um, of course, as the Athletic then ranks the Sixers number one, they then lose to the Magic, who are one of the worst NBA teams in the league. And it's just the perfect balance of never too high and never too low. Always right in that middle of like, we're just going to entertain you enough. It's the most Philly, 48 hours that I've seen.
And you add the Sixers beating Jokic and the Nuggets on
Yeah.
Saturday. It was a fever dream for about 48 hours, and then tonight, right before we start this podcast, it was just one of the most dreadful halves of basketball you've ever seen from a professional sports franchise. So, it's a yin and yang, but hey, we'll take it. We'll take the Super Bowl. We'll take the win over the MVP of the last 2 years. It's all good. But we can't talk about that very much because we saw not only all those Philly sports this weekend, we saw, I can't even count how many amazing, electrifying performances on the track this weekend. It was wild. Like, you had NCAA records going down. You had, on the pro side, you had American records going down. Everything that you would want from a weekend of track, you got it this weekend. So we're going to try to run through as many results as we can, as quickly as we can. And if we didn't get to you because you didn't run maybe like a top 5 time in your event, we're sorry. You just had to have the bar to get on this week's episode is about as high as I can remember.
It might be the highest I can remember. I don't remember a time other than maybe the national meet, right? Um, I can't remember a time that it was this hard to get a mention on our rankings. It's no secret that, we'll talk about the Washington Men rankings in a minute here. But real quick, ratings and reviews, we got +1 on Apple, none on Spotify. I can't remember the last time that happened. So thank you to the Apple review. We do appreciate that. Hey, go leave us a rating and review. Go subscribe on YouTube. Anything. 5 stars, 4 stars, maybe not 3, 2, or 1, but after that, that'd be great. Anyways, we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to keep the intro to less than 3 minutes, sort of less than 3 minutes. Ben, what do you want to talk about first?
Let's just go in order of the events. So let's just start at the 800. We saw a couple really quick 800s on the men's side. Creighton Carrozza 146.2, Elliott Cook 146.9, and then Cass Elliott 147.2. I think these all kind of came out of nowhere to varying degrees. Carrozza's obviously someone who's been, I think, in both of our minds, a possible contender in the 800. He's been very good at the national level, but this is a big step up for him. He's always been a smart racer, but maybe didn't have quite as fast as PRs as maybe some of his competitors. That is no longer the case. And then you throw in Elliott Cook, who's coming off of I think a 220 in the 1,000, solid performance there, but then a big step up in the 800, and then Cass Elliott rounding out this group at 147, another strong step for him forward. What stuck out for you is at the time, how do we feel about the men's 800 field all of a sudden that multiple people have run 146 this early in the season?
Yeah, I don't know if I feel dramatically all that different. And I think I would maybe actually argue that I do think there were subtle signs that some of these guys were going to maybe run something pretty quick. Like Cass Elliott ran something pretty quick in the 600 meters, I think it was. He ran 116, which is pretty fast. And he has a
Yes.
history of being a 148 guy. So I thought 147 was in his range. I predicted him to be second. I was. It was the only prediction I got right at all this weekend. Elliott Cook, 338 guy, ran a 220 1K. There were signs that he could run pretty quick. Had already run something pretty quick over 800 meters. And Carrozza, he has a 146 PR. He just improved upon it, and he did it on the indoor oval. He's been a mile All-American from last year. But these are significant step ups. For me, it's Elliott Cook. they need to have a focal point. They need to have a face of the Oregon program as they transition between eras. It looks like Cook can be that guy. It's only 2 races so far, but 146 in January, it's a good sign.
Yeah, I don't know where he stacks up, and I don't even know if this will be his event. I mean, he could still go to the mile. He could still end up running like a 354 or something and qualifying in the mile. And with 146 speed, he'd be a big contender there, just like he's an All American contender now, I think, in the 800. As for Croza, I mean, and I think this is reflected in our rankings. He's probably like the highest ranked out of the group that's run well so far in the 800. There are other guys who either haven't run the 800 or haven't run at all this season that might be a little higher than him. But he's someone that you certainly have to look at as maybe not a favorite, but a contender at this point, because everything seems to be coming together perfectly for him.
Well, Carosa, the thing with him is that we don't even know if he's going to run the
Yeah.
800. We just don't. I mean, like, if Texas goes for a DMR, which admittedly this year might actually be pretty tricky, right?
Yeah.
They don't have Yassine Abdallah. Cole Lindhorst commented on one of our Instagram posts that, like, hey, he actually like broke his foot. He wasn't racing this past weekend. Sometimes people like to troll. I don't think that that's the case in this scenario. I'm just being cautious, right, about reporting anything. But if Lindhorst really is, and I don't really think we have a reason to doubt him, then, like, that's going to be really hard. Like, they have Cruz Gomez. Like, there are guys there, but it's going to be a little bit harder to stand out in this year's DMR field. And if that happens, then I think it creates a more realistic opening for Carosa to attack the 800. But if they do get a DMR qualified, they will run it. And then that means Carosa will likely run the mile.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, it'll be fascinating to see where he ends up regardless. On the women's side, we saw Michaela Rose run 2:01 in the second to fastest heat at Arkansas. Ended up being the fastest time in the country. Huge performance for her. I believe that puts her at NCAA #1. It does. Shout out to her, because I don't know where we had her at the beginning of the year, but this is certainly a big improvement on where we saw her at the beginning of the season.
I think we had her just missed. So I don't remember that for a fact, but yeah, I mean, it's wild just because she ran it in the fifth heat of 6.
And by herself. Like, she just took it from the gun and just, like, no pacers, just ran 2:01. She could have done that in practice, the way it looked.
She looked so strong. It was so incredible to see her just be like, oh, you don't think I'm fast enough for the top heat, huh? It was unbelievable watching her pull away. Like, you got 75 meters in, and I'm sitting there like, surely this can't be how the race ends. And no, that's how the race ends. She opens up the gap and destroys the field. It was so impressive. I wanted to see her in the hot heat because I was like, okay, then how do your tactics change in that standpoint, right? How do you approach that differently when you have to get through more lap traffic that's actually going to keep up with you? I mean, she dominated by what, 5 seconds, over 5 seconds? Like, so big fan of Rose. I mean, she's shown signs that she was going to be great. I don't think we expected it to be instantaneous, but really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, a good performance, I think, would have been a 2:03 this weekend for her. And I think we would have been like, hey, great run. 2:01 is quite a performance. And like you said, it'll be interesting to see how she performs against better competition in a loaded 800 field nationally. I'm sure she's going to run up against some of these really good women across the country at some point. It'll be fascinating to see if she can take home the win in that scenario. But yeah, I mean, incredible performance for her. Certainly puts her in that group of, I mean, how many people can we call contenders in the 800 on the women's side? Like 6, 8, 10? Like, I know Lindsey Butler's there, but like,
oh, man.
Like, outside of her, like, I feel like there's so many other names.
I mean, I'm just trying to list them. I guess Butler, Whitaker, Willis, Galvadite. Are we saying her still? I don't know. I mean, do we want to throw Rose in there now? There's names I'm missing, like Sarah Hendrick, I'm sure.
Nielsen.
Yeah, I guess Nielsen could maybe. It depends on. We'll talk about her in a second. I don't know what
Whitaker.
TDM. Yeah, I think I said Whitaker. I don't know, but there's you
Yeah.
kind of get the exercise we're doing of like this is impossible.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not even really going to talk about the women who ran fast times in the 800 this weekend. Valerie Tobias was 202, Hendrick was 203, Carly Thomas 203, Rosen Willis, Imogen Barrett, all 203. Like, all very good performances. And on most weeks, we might be leading with this, but we're really not going to
Hmm.
talk about it because we have so many other things to get through. And we saw Rose run 201 this weekend.
I just feel bad for Tobias. She runs 202,
I
and we're
know.
just like, not now, Tobias. Like we're busy. She's so consistent, and she keeps proving me wrong. And I'm just like, well, I don't know if she's this, and I don't know if she's that. And then she keeps proving me wrong. She keeps getting better. So I do want to shout out Tobias because she did have a really nice race, even if she was in a pro heavy field. 202 is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything on the 800s before we move on?
We cannot stay here for too long.
Okay. All right. We're going to go to Wilma Nielsen, who in the 1,000 ran 238.95, just missing the NCAA record by a little less than half a second. Just kind of an out of nowhere. Like, I mean, we knew she was good. We knew she had run 203 earlier in the year. She had been showing signs that she had improved her fitness, but to run sub 240, like, that was not something that was on, I think, either of our bingo cards for this year.
So I actually got to see Danae Rivers set the collegiate 1K record, right? And it was at a small Penn State meet early in the year. Didn't really expect it, but when you saw her run and you kind of knew what her background was, you go, pretty insane, but makes sense. There's nothing on her resume, on Nielsen's resume, to say that she was going to run 238, much less under 241. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I know she was in an insanely fast pro field. I know there was Aji Wilson and Sage Hurdock-Klecker, and I know Sophia Gorarian was in there from the high school scene. I mean, it was a stacked field. So sure, maybe under 241, but this is like unprecedented. I mean, like at this point, this suggests that she's going to run 201.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so Rivers, I mean, she came in with like PRs of 202 and 429 in the mile. Like,
Yeah.
she was someone that, like, was excellent in both of those events, and especially the mile at times. Like, that was something that where it made a lot of sense for her to be in that in between distance and just excel at it. For Nielsen, this is just, I mean, to run 203 and not have that fast of a mile PR, you would have expected, yeah, like you said, 242, 243 would have been a really good day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what makes, like, her scaring the record just so incredible. And I think the biggest question that I have is, where does this put her nationally now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously the K is in an event at nationals, so she's got to be in the 800 or the mile. And like, where, I'm curious to see what she'll run in the mile after doing this, and I'm curious what she ends up doing. And I just don't know where to put her though in either event. Like, is she a top 3 contender? I mean, because a 238 would say that you probably should be, but I don't know if I'm quite ready to go there.
I completely agree. This was a conversation that Mara, Scotty, and myself had when crafting the women's rankings. It's like, listen, you want to reward great efforts, but you need to know how they translate. You need to see more consistency, and you need to know, like, can you legitimately run at this level? And it's not that she can't; she clearly can, but it's, can she run 201, too flat? Can she compete for the national title? Like, we don't know. What can she do in the mile? I'm sure Nielsen's going to tear it up. Like, I have no problem, I've no doubt about that. But it's now just a matter of like, let's see where she keeps climbing from here. I said in our first thoughts article that if someone set the over under at like 240, I would have put a heavy bet
Oh,
on the
100%.
over. And if they set it at 239, I would have put everything I own and my next 3 children on the over for 239, and I would have lost everything. Everything.
So I think we both probably expect her to run, if she runs the mile, like something in the low 430s.
Yep.
Just, we obviously talked about the 800 being super loaded, the mile not quite as much, although this weekend maybe changes things a little bit there. Do you think she ends up running the mile, or?
I mean, it depends on what she runs in the mile, right? I have a feeling there's a greater history for her in the 800 meters. It's
Yeah.
her primary event. Unless she runs something like 4:30, I don't see her moving away from the 800. She has national meet experience from the 2021 outdoor season in the 800 meters. She's run 202 overseas before. I think there's too much history there, but if she's running like 428, 429, maybe 430, then like yeah, it's a little bit different. And it feels absurd to like make that suggestion, but this week has taught me that like I will be wrong no matter what I say. So I just don't know. I don't think it's the mile. I think she would go for the 800.
Yeah, I agree. And I think she's going to run something much faster than that 203 that she ran last weekend. The question now is, can she use this newfound fitness to tactically win races?
Yep.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's I think the what you were kind of getting at earlier. That's what we have to see out of her before we put her in that kind of contender status. So crazy good performance. Did
Yeah.
not expect to see the NCAA record get that much of a scare in the 1K for the women's side, but great performance for her. She will certainly be much higher on my watch list the rest of the year. But let's move on. We got a lot more to get through here. In the mile, we got to start with the Washington men.
Okay.
What so did you watch this race live, or did you just see the results come up?
So I just saw the results. I actually, of all the races I watched, I don't think I actually saw this one. I still have to go back and watch it.
I
There's like
watched
10
like
one
the
one.
last 600 or something, and because
Okay.
this is me. I imagine the first K was pretty much just a long line.
Yeah. It usually
Um,
is.
but when I saw those results pop up, I was like, did something happen with the results? Is there a smudge on my screen? Like, what happened here? Because I have never seen a one school dominate one event like this. 8 under 4 minutes. I think it was what, 4 under 3:53 or faster, or maybe five with Ellis. Is that right?
I think you're right. Yeah. I'm looking to double
I'm
check here.
just a wild performance. Not only the depth, but the top end results. Joe Wascom just on a crusade to prove to everyone that he is not just a good finisher, good tactical runner. He is a legit superstar in his event, running 351, taking down teammate Brian Fay, Nathan Green, who both ran 352. And I mean, who are you most impressed by? Because like I feel like that's also like one of the hardest questions in this race. Obviously, Wascom is kind of comes out of this looking like the next mile superstar in the NCAA, but the guys that are behind him like aren't even some of them aren't even milers, and they're running 352, 353.
It's either Wascom or Green. The thing with Wascom is that he run 218, so I'm like, okay, he might run something like really
Yeah,
quick. I didn't think it would be this quick, but as the reigning 1500-meter national champion, you can now understand why he now more solidly fits into this like national picture. Maybe we'll talk about him in a moment. Nathan Green should not be running 352. He just shouldn't. He's a redshirt freshman. He ran four flat in high school, which is great, right? Like shows great potential that he'll be a star in the future. But this is his first collegiate indoor track season. I know he ran unattached last year. He shouldn't be running this fast. Why? Because he also ran 358 in the mile and like wasn't competitive against the Stanford men. So to go from 358, really not being competitive, and then going to 352 is so unbelievable. That doesn't happen. This is not supposed to happen. Nathan Green should not have run 352, which is what makes me so impressed with him. Because he had shown signs of being like a true, like, hey, he's going to be a real problem in the future. 352 is like, oh, he's not just like a problem now. He might be setting up to be one of the greatest American like milers that we ever see. Like, is that real like dumb to say about a guy who's a redshirt freshman running 352? I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I think you're seeing the ceiling of his talent, and like you're seeing that.
This is his ceiling.
No. I think what this performance shows is that the ceiling is so much higher than we
Yes,
ever
that's
would have
correct.
expected.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think, well, obviously coming out of high school, very good runner, showed signs of his talent even over the last year or so. But this just like puts him in a completely different category. And I think you can say the same about Wascom. Like obviously that 1500-meter champion like was such a big performance there. But for him to run this fast, I mean, it's just he has everything now that you would want for someone who can win an NCAA title, like, and even compete at USA's like this spring. Like, I think that's what's so impressive for me. But I mean, in terms of a breakout star, no one's beating what Green did.
Let's talk about a little bit about Wascom. I'm just so blown away. Like I'm just looking at these results and my jaw keeps dropping. Like it shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have 6 guys at 355 or faster in the same race. Now I'm sure the Oregon men are like, didn't we have 4 guys at 354 or faster like during the 2021 indoor season, something like that? So there's a little bit of a comparison, but the overall depth is insane. Um, with Wascom, I don't know how he's not the national title favorite for the mile.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I don't even think it's close. I don't think anyone's going to touch. Like, I don't think anyone can do anything leading up to the national meet now that will lead me to believe that they can win the national title over him. He's tactically brilliant. He's run one of the fastest mile times we've ever seen in collegiate history. He has experience, and he's seemingly getting better. Like, he seemingly has no ceiling.
Yeah.
I don't know how someone beats him on the national stage.
I mean, he's getting to like Cole Hawker territory. Like that,
Yeah.
I mean, he not quite as fast, but in terms of his ability to kick and run this quick of a time, like we are getting to that point, which is scary to say. But I want to touch on what Brian Fay did in terms of like he nearly won this race.
Yeah.
Like he like Wascom had to come from behind and push to get past him. That was an incredible performance for someone who's going to be running the 3K, 5K. Like he looks great. I feel like we said this multiple times in the middle of seasons before with him, where it almost seems like he maybe peaks before nationals. If he can run like this, he is going to challenge anyone, I think, in the 3K or 5K. And then Kieran Lum, you can say a similar thing about him. Huge performance for someone who's not going to be running this event. But I mean, we could talk about this race all day.
You don't think Kieran Lum would run the mile? You don't think he could do the 3K mile double?
Maybe. I just like when you look at like the rest of the guys for Washington that are going to be running the mile, like how many are they going to put in the mile? You don't think he'll just focus on the 3K straight up?
I think the DMR plays a factor. It depends on what they want to do with the DMR, because they're clearly going to try to maximize points because they have something. I think they're like, hey, we got Cass Elliott now. Like, he's probably going to qualify. I would hope he does. Like it's like all these things are aligning for them. So I think they'll be like, hey, like Lum's a 353 guy. Go run the mile. We'll take Hauser. We'll take Ryan. Who else would we take here? Yeah, those guys. And we'll put them on a DMR and maximize points. I don't even know if Hauser's going to get into the national meet.
No, he won't.
55. Like they'll have Wascom, Green, and Hauser, or Wascom, Green, and Lum run the mile. Lum will double back for the 3K. And then, we'll go from there.
Yeah. I still think Lum might just focus on the 3K and try to maximize points there. I don't know. I think the 3K is one of those events where so few people come into it completely fresh, and that's such an advantage if you can. So we'll see though. I mean, 353, you could be with anybody in the mile right there. So
you would think. So we've made a lot of assumptions this past weekend. It did not work out.
I can't wait. We got to figure out when we're doing this, but we need to guess our over-under qualifying lines, because I always love doing this, and every year I'm like, Garrett, we should set the lines lower. We need to, and I almost always go under, and I feel pretty good about. We're gonna have to set them extremely low this year for me to go not to go under.
I mean,
Well,
I felt like the title of the first thoughts article we put was I severely underestimated everyone. That was literally the title of our article. And you just went through every prediction I had. It wasn't even close. Like the 3K, men's 3Ks, Tuohy's mile. Like the only thing that I was even remotely close about was the women's mile at the Washington Invite and then the men's 800 at the Washington Invite. That was it. That was literally the only thing I could be proud of. It was a brutal day, brutal weekend of predictions for me.
So elsewhere, we saw Fouad Massaudi run 354 and teammate Ryan Schaub run 355. I think he's going to be probably not qualifying for NCAAs or very, very close to being on the edge with his 355.6. I think Massaudi's in. I don't know what he'll end up doing, but he continues to look very, very good. And I think on any other weekend, this would have been a much, much bigger deal. But let's transition to the women's side. You just mentioned it. Caitlin Tuohy running 424 against the pros to take home the NCAA record in the mile. Obviously, what we've seen from Tuohy this year, there's nothing that she can really do that's going to stun us because of what the expectations are for her. But this was just a really impressive performance. She really put herself out there. Alicia Monson is on a different level,
She's so good.
for like US and internationally. She is just where she's at is incredible. And then Whitney Morgan, formerly Whitney Orton, looked really good. But Tuohy was very aggressive.
She tried to make a move. Yeah.
She was trying to win that race. She gave Monson all she could handle on that backstretch. And I was very impressed to see Tuohy not just be content with kind of being pulled along to a fast time. She wanted to win and very nearly did. Had to settle for third, but I thought the fight that she was able to put in was almost as impressive as the 424 itself.
It's just so incredible. I can't, like 424. 424. I mean, it's just insane. I predicted her to be 428 because I was like, well, you look at her 1500 meter PR and like it kind of aligns roughly when you look at the all time list. It seems about right. Like, yeah, 428. I did not think that was like a ridiculous suggestion. 424 makes me feel so dumb, but she just is completely different. I think we have to be on GOAT watch. To be honest, I think we were probably already on it, but I think now we're now more significantly on it. And now I think we also have to ask the question: what does she run at the national meet? Why would she run the 5K? Run the mile. If they really want her for the DMR, maybe. Then do the 3K. She can do it.
I think the only reason you run the 5K is because it's an easier double with the 3K. You don't have to run those both on the same day. You don't have to run 3 races like you do for the mile. But I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I think that she could absolutely do it.
Here's the thing. I think she has a 3K coming up. Millrose. She's set to run Millrose. If she comes close or does get the 3K record there, I bet you they're like Bowerman.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to try to go triple or, I don't know. Or maybe that's too risky, right? Maybe they're like, well, if she just wins 2 titles, right? We're now getting to semantics here where it's just like.
We're getting to Edward Cheserek level. This is essentially where we're at because I don't think anybody else has done that mile 3K double before, and won both besides Ches. Is that right?
I'm sure it's been done. Oh,
really?
I'm sure it's been done. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
It's such a hard double. Yeah, I'd be curious. But yeah, whatever she decides to do, she will be the favorite in any event that she runs in, mile and above. And I frankly, and the 3K record is what? Is it 8:48? Is that
No,
right?
no. It's so much faster. It's like 8:45.
45. Okay.
I'll take a look now. Let me confirm.
Take a
Hold
look
on.
because I'm trying to figure out what I think she's going to be able to run in the 3K. Like I don't think low 840s is
Oh, I lied. It's not 8:45. That's what Monson ran back in 2019.
okay.
That's right. I forgot. It's 8:41.6.
Oh my.
Yeah, I forgot Schweizer ran that. You think I would remember that, but yeah, I remember Schweizer. I think she ran that at Milrose. Jenny Behringer is 8:42.03. Why did I think it was 8:45?
Yeah, and I
That's
don't know
because of
why I thought it
Monson.
was 848.
Yeah,
We're well off on that. Can she break 840?
my initial reaction to that was, well, no. And now I'm like, oh, well, maybe. I, I, I I don't know. Maybe she can, honestly. And I'm a very cautious, conservative predictor. But I hate getting burned. I don't want to keep getting burned after this. She might be able to run 840
I mean,
or 839.
Schweitzer was not running anywhere close to this in the mile when she ran that, right? She
Also,
was
I'm pretty confident that's also wrong. But let me check, let me check that out.
I think she was like 420 highs, I would imagine. So
She was. Oh, I don't see that there. I don't see her. Please hold. Oh yeah, here we go. 427.54. Yeah, so
okay,
she's pretty good.
3.5. Yeah, but still, like I mean, that's a sizable gap away from what Tuohy just did.
Well, yeah, she just ran the collegiate record by
Yeah,
over a
well,
second
right,
and a half.
exactly.
Like,
I think Tuohy to do it. I think she'll do it.
I think she can. This is me being ridiculous. Yeah, I think she'll do it. I agree. I think she'll set the record. I don't know if she'll go under 840. She could. I think she'll set the record.
Yeah, man, it's so we've missed this kind of all time talent. Like since we've and maybe specifically me has like been doing the podcast and writing for the site. We haven't had. I mean, we that all time dominant star. We kind of got a little bit taste of that with Morgan McDonald, but he wasn't breaking records and just like demoralizing people from the very like beginning of races. This is just a different level than anything we've seen in the last 5 or so years, and I'm here for it. It's fantastic to watch. We saw so we saw some
I will
really
say, real quick. I will say I think there's an argument for Schweizer. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
yes, that's fair too. Yeah, what she did
On the women's
whenever
side, Chaz
when
was pretty good, but yeah,
when she was healthy, she was about as dominant as anybody we've ever seen. That's fair.
agreed.
Um, Elsewhere, we saw some really fast miles. We saw Anna Gibson run a 4:31 converted mile. Alexandra Carlson 4:31. Kaylee McCabe 4:31. Lauren Gregory 4:31. Kaylee Mitchell 4:32. Saw Chamberlain 4:33. Julia Whitaker 4:33 as well. Just like in our not very deep mile field, we just saw like what was that? 6 women under 4:33 that weren't named Caitlin Tuohy. Like it was ridiculous, and a lot of these women I don't think are going to run the mile necessarily, but like it was stunning to watch. You see someone like Julia Whitaker run 4:33 and really challenge Lauren Gregory for long stretches of that race. I was really impressed. Similar to what I said about Tuohy pushing Monson, I was really impressed with what I saw out of Whitaker, really putting her nose in there and giving Gregory all she could handle. I mean, that's going to go by the wayside because of all these other performances. And Carlson with the big breakout, McCabe looking like she's back to full form. Like, there's so many things you could say about these results, but I don't really know where to start.
It's so impressive. I mean, there's something, there's like a key thing to say about each woman who we just talked about. Gibson, Carlson, McCabe, Gregory, Mitchell, Chamberlain, Whitaker. And I'm going to try to do my best here. Gibson, a 4:37 mile at altitude shows that she can be like a legitimate problem on the same track that's going to host the national meet. Like, this is huge for someone who's not at altitude to come up in altitude and be like, hey, I'm going to basically destroy your best milers. Like, that's insane. Carlson is making that freshman to sophomore jump. She showed signs of being like a star. Now she's actually there. She was very competitive in that field at Boston U. She was second overall, I think, ahead of like Annie Rodenfalls. I know I butchered that name. Um, Gosh, and who was like McCabe 431 shows me that maybe she can be tactical. Gregory, her speed's the best it's ever been. Really held off some great efforts. Mitchell basically battled with Chamberlain in that second to last heat. Whitaker was so composed. Like there's key things of just like, oh, they didn't just run fast. It's there are extra layers to this. That's what
Mm-hmm.
makes it so impressive.
Yeah, I mean, for McCabe and Gregory, it just shows that they're back at full fitness, that they are going to be a problem in the 3K, 5K, whatever they decide to run. And for these other women, it's just they're elevated to another level that we didn't think they were at previously. And that's such a huge confidence booster. Like you said, with Gibson, doing that at altitude is huge. And it'll be fascinating to see what role that plays at the national meet. And obviously she can take a lot of confidence knowing that she's already done that. Anything else here? We got even more NCAA records to get to.
No, I just feel bad because those were really good mile performances, and I don't know. Shout out Liam Murphy at Villanova, led like 5 guys at Penn State under 4 minutes. He ran 3:55. Like it's ridiculous. He ran 3:55. 4 other guys I think went under 4 minutes, and we're just like, whatever. Like I'm just so dumb. It's so dumb. I hate us for doing this. All right, let's talk about the 3K. Where do you want to start? Well, where
Yeah.
should we start?
We got to start with maybe like the most jaw dropping, maybe beat. I don't know. It's either that or the Washington men. Like Drew Bosley, not only running the NCAA record, but smashing Jared Negus's 738, which that was such a huge performance for Negus because the record before that had been around for a long time at 738. For Bosley to just smoke it, to run 736 and just hang on to, I mean, Jared Negus ran 728 to run the American record, which was just like
so
one
ridiculous.
of the wildest things I've ever seen. like that whole race, like, I mean, honestly, Boston in the 3K and 5K was just wild to watch. But like for Bosley to hang in there and these kind of circumstances, like obviously having guys ahead of you to pace off of is great, but if you can easily burn yourself out too quickly. You can get demoralized when you get dropped, and neither of those things happened with Bosley. He just ran a perfect race to run 736, and just I don't even know what to do with him now. Like I think he's almost gone ahead of Nico Young in the pecking. It's hard for me to say that, but I think he's almost there. And I just want to see what he can do the rest of the season and see if this level of fitness is going to be able to translate to NCAAs. Is he going to be able to do what Abdi Nur did last year, where we were like, is he really going to win an NCAA title? Can he kick past some of these guys? Well, maybe he's just like flat out 3 or 4 seconds better than anybody else, and he can just dominate. Like maybe we've gotten to that point with him.
2 things. The first one is not even related to this in the slightest bit. Laola Lang won the 2013 mile 3K double. That's all I'm going to say.
Good to know.
I forgot I had this link open, and I was like, oh, let me check this. Anyways, Drew Bosley, yeah. The thing with me is that I didn't think, like, I think you and I agree on this, is that you need some level of leg speed for you to be successful in the 3K. And
yes, because 4 flat mile pace is 730.
Like, I didn't think he had that. I just didn't. And that's what blows my mind. He ran 736. Like, he shouldn't have been able to do that. He destroyed the record. And listen, I get it. He's in the best shape of his life. You and I both knew that. Hey, he's in the best shape of his life. 3rd at NCAA XC, 13-13. He was a reason why that Boston U 5K in December was fast. We knew he was like fast. I did not suspect him to run 736. I thought if he's going to run an NCAA record, it'd be in the 5K. It would not be in the 3K. I agree. There's questions about his tactics. I just don't know how this translates. Like we saw with Negus, last year. I think I have similar questions with Dylan Jacobs. I think there's legitimate questions, right? Like, can you translate this? There's also the Abdi Nur argument, or the Eric Jenkins Ed Chezik argument, or Lowy Lang of like, maybe they're just better, and maybe that's the argument. And if that's the case, man, then like, yeah.
And at altitude, at NCAA's, that's only going to help him.
Right.
Like he's going to be chomping at the bit. Like that's going to feel like fresh air for him too. Like coming down from 7,000 feet at Flagstaff. Like he's not going to be affected by that at all. The thing is, like, we're not going to know anything until NCAA's. And that's the crazy part. Like, he's done everything he can do at this point. If he goes out and runs an NCAA record in the 5K, which I don't think he's going to necessarily run another 5K, but like it wouldn't be like, I don't know how much more that would improve his stock going into NCAA's. Like, this is just that good of a performance that he just has to go out and show that he can win an NCAA title at this point. There's nothing left for him to do.
I think what's going to happen is that he's going to go to altitude in a week or two, a couple weeks, whatever. He's going to run a mile at altitude. He's going to run like a 353 conversion.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to talk about it. And we're going to try to have a hot take about it and about how it translates. And at the end of the day, it will likely not matter when it actually gets to the national meet. That's not to say that it won't be an impressive performance. Like I just know how these things go, right? Yeah. Like we did it last year with Nico Young. We're going to do it again with Drew Bosley. I do love Drew Bosley though. I mean, like he is like him coming out of high school. I looked at it, I was like, I think he's the perfect fit for NAU. I did not think he would run 7:36 in the 3K. I just didn't. But I was like, hey, he's a perfect fit. I didn't think he was so perfect that he'd be an NCAA record holder.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. It just jaw-dropping performance. And he looks like he could be one of the futures of American distance running at this point. Mm-hmm. Like yeah. it really, this weekend and in general, and you mentioned this in one of your first thoughts article, just an incredible like time for American distance running. It took a huge step forward this week. Yassine Abdallah, 742. Yeah. I mean,
I feel so bad.
I mean, amazing performance. And Anas SIE ran 741 at Dr. Sanders. Like, great. Like, someone ran 5 seconds faster than you. This is the same weekend. Like, it's just like incredible performances, but like the NCAA record got broken.
And here's the worst part: like SAE's at 5 all time, Abdallah's at 6 all time. Are we super confident that they're going to remain there?
No,
for the rest of the season. I'm not.
No,
I'm not at all. I think like I'm sure Nico Young's going to run something. I don't know where he is, but I'm sure he's going to run something insanely fast, right? Like we'll keep going down the list. Maybe Dylan Jacobs gets into something quick. Like I don't know.
I mean, one of the Stanford guys is going to run faster than they did this past
that's
weekend.
True. I mean, it's just crazy stuff that Abdallah and SE are running 742 and 741, and I don't really know how much time we're going to like talk about them.
I think this also, is it. Like they ran great, but like it's hard to say like even that they're national title contenders. Like,
are you? Can you name anyone off the cuff that has shown better range than Anas SE? Off the cuff. 147, 334 before he came to South Carolina. I think he ran 330. You ran 339 outdoors.
I mean, Nagoose, but
did Nagoose run 147 though?
I think he's run one. He didn't. He ran 148. Did he not?
I mean, I guess.
I mean, Kip Sang would probably be the only active runner that I think would probably be able to do. Maybe not. I don't think he'd run 741 in the 3K. Like, but I think he could probably run 744, 45.
Yeah, you're right. Nagoose is probably if we're really going to be like ticky tack about the 800. You're right. It's probably Nagoose.
But I mean, we're talking about someone that we're favorably comparing to Nagoose right now, who I don't know how you feel, but I don't think he's a lock to be a top 5 in any event this year. Like,
I don't think he's a lock. I'd say he'd be favored though.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, he should. I think he should, and I mean, I think he's clearly going to be an All-American in whatever race he runs. But like, it's just there's so many other guys. We haven't seen him put it together at NCAA's quite yet, but he has shown that he can run tactically well. He did that at SEC championships multiple times. He's just got to put it there at the national stage. And like Bosley, there's really, quite frankly, nothing he can do until he gets to nationals and proves that he can do it at that stage.
Well, it was problematic because like we basically claimed him as like this, and this is like my new term that I like to use for runners. I said it about Isaac Bastian, um, uh, but he was like I think we like donned him as like a tactical savant,
Yeah.
right? And we were like, this guy is tactically, and he was right. He was undefeated going into the year, so he clearly knew how to race and all those things. But then he had that weird prelim where he stepped off in the 1500 meter
Yeah.
prelims like 100 meters before the finish, which was bizarre. Um, so I don't know. I think that's like leaving a little bit of a bad taste in our mouth about like what should we expect. I think that was a fluke. It almost certainly was, but now I just don't know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's going to be certainly someone either in the mile and the 3K is going to be dangerous, and I don't think anybody's going to want to see. Elsewhere, we saw Casey Klinger take home a big win,
Like when
beating the Stanford guys. He ran 7:43. Cole Sprout was 7:44. I mean, it was a great win for Klinger, and I think this tells us a lot more about him than
mm,
maybe anybody else in this race. But the Stanford guys did not look great. Like
no,
Sprout looked good. He was pushing the pace for a while, and like had a nice little charge there at the end to kind of close the gap a little bit on Klinger. But Robinson and Hicks just were not good. I'm not as surprised to see Hicks maybe struggle a little bit as he's kind of rounding back into track form after spending a lot of time running cross country even after NCAA's. But I mean, Robinson, we saw him run really well in the mile and run really well in December at Boston. I got to imagine this was just an off day because he didn't look remotely like himself.
he didn't look good at all. Hicks just like I feel bad. Like Hicks just ran bad. Um, and the sort of good thing with Hicks, it's like half good, half bad. That like Hicks did the same thing last year.
Yes.
Really poor 3K to start his season. Slightly got better as the season went on. 7:43 just before the national meet, qualifies third place. I imagine he'll probably do the same thing. Maybe he'll try to attack the 5K. Like I just feel bad. He clearly does not do well with rust, but he's an NCAA XC champion. He will be at the national meet.
Yeah.
I hope. But Robinson was weird because like you and I were on this podcast, and I think I was like Robinson, greatest like race IQ in the NCAA right now. So smart, really understands position. I kind of, and I just from an outsider's perspective, I don't know what was going through anyone's head, but Klinger and Sprout kind of like gap, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's very deceptive. I think by that point you're like, oh, like go close the gap, and then it's just a little too wide, and just Robinson never really had any room or time to go try to catch them, and yeah, he just looked off. I think it's more of a fluke race, but it was just surprising because I just don't. The Stanford guys were up there at the beginning, like
Yeah, they were
changing
pushing
back
it.
and forth. They were pushing it. I was like, I don't know if we really need to do that. But what do I know? So
Yeah, and that was kind of as I was watching it, rewatching it. I was like, they're never gonna do this again. Like where like at NCAA's, granted that they still need to run the time to get there, they're not going to be the ones pushing the pace. Like Robinson's going to want to just hang back and use his really good kick to be able to take home the win. So I'm going to chalk that one up to a fluke. If we see another race like that, I'll be a little bit more concerned. But for now, I think we'll be okay. Let's finish, or we got a little bit more, but let's go to the 5K where we saw Dylan Jacobs run 13:11, improve on his American collegiate record, I believe, against a loaded pro field at Boston. this is just about right. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot to say. Like,
Nope.
he's clearly able to do this. I don't think either of us are stunned by this result in the slightest. And I don't think we really learned a lot about him. I think he's going to be a very competitive name in the 5K. I don't know if he's the favorite, but he's certainly a contender. And I think this shows that he's just in good shape like we expected him to be.
I have nothing more to say. Completely correct. And I feel bad because like this was an incredible. It's number 3 all time, and we're like, sounds good. Next, like it's just insane. But yeah, I agree. I just fully agree. I have literally nothing else to contribute to this conversation.
All right, well, let's wrap it up with the DMR on the women's side. At Arkansas, we saw a lot of good times. Stanford took home the win in 10:55, Arkansas 10:56, Oklahoma State 10:57, Florida and BYU 10:57 as well, and Kentucky 10:58. Just a lot of teams just went ahead and I think punched their ticket to NCAA's, but I mean, with the just sheer volume, I mean, this is 7 teams that ran 11 flat or faster. I mean, that's over half the field right there at NCAA's, assuming that there isn't 6 other teams that can go under 11 as well. I mean, maybe
There are.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing: Duke and UNC ran 10:57 and 10:58, I think, at Penn State. So like there's actually like really 8 teams that went under 11, 9 that were like 11 or flat or faster. I have never seen this in the month of January, not for the DMR. The DMR is not supposed to be this fast this early.
No, it's like a lot of schools just were like, hey, let's just try to knock it out of the way early, not have to worry about it.
And what happened on the men's side?
Yeah, I don't know. Because, I mean, the fastest at Arkansas, I mean, Oklahoma State ran 9:29, and Texas A&M had a really good performance
Great
for
race.
9:29 as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, Arkansas did not finish. Kind of some weird performances there. But going back to the women's side, is Stanford running 10:55 with a 4:42 split? Like in the mile, like is that one of the slowest mile splits to still run 10:55 in?
It might actually. Yeah, it might. I was thinking about that. And here's the thing. It was a slow mile split. They're going to need to, or anchor split, 1600, whatever. They're going to need to get faster on that. But Melissa Tanaka was extremely smart.
Yeah.
She is like, she let Volby in the field catch up to her, but it was still just enough where that group really had to hit the gas to like close the gap. And then in the final moments, Tanaka's like, all right, now time for me to kick while all these other women are gassed from trying to catch me. And it worked to perfection. It was a really smart race, despite what some might think of being like, wow, they need faster than 4:42. I imagine what's going to happen is that they're going to try to realign the DMR so that Whitaker tries to get on the anchor. Willis is like, I guess she could run the 12. I don't know, but I think they would try to put someone else on the 12, whether that's Tanaka, whether that's I don't know, like Lucy Jenks, someone along those lines. So I think that will probably be the new approach.
Yeah, I mean, Whitaker and Willis running 3:18 and 2:01, like just blowing away the rest of the field. Like they picked up so much time elsewhere. Lauren Gregory did her darndest to get Arkansas back in this with a 4:29 split, but like it was just a tour de force by those 2 freshman Stanford runners for this DMR. But yeah, I mean, elsewhere, I mean, like you said, Volby, I think good. This is the first time we've seen her. This indoor season period? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
So I mean, good to know that she's healthy, running decently well. Be curious to see when she opens up with the 3K and 5K, if she does run the 5K. But yeah, I don't have too much more here. I think these are all good races for a lot of these teams.
Shout out Duke, UNC. Unfortunately, they just weren't part of this race, so they just probably won't get as much airtime as maybe some of these other teams, but they ran exceptionally well. But yeah, dude, I mean, this was... I can't believe we actually got this done in over an hour. Or under an hour, excuse me.
Yeah. And I felt like I was pushing us. Like I felt
applause. Hey, everyone at home, just Give Ben a little applause here. Well done, man. Well done. I saw you pushing the pace a little bit, setting the pace, breaking the wind, dragging my butt through it. I saw it.
Hey, we're trying to run as fast as some of these times this weekend. I don't think we broke an NCAA record with this performance, but we did our best.
Shout out to everyone listening. Go subscribe on YouTube. What I'm trying to think, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please leave a review. Please, Mom, I know you're listening. Please leave a review. And then go check out the site. New D1 rankings are now out. By the way, what I wanted to say about Nathan Green is that we ranked him at TSR number 18. He's a 352 miler, and I felt like the worst human being for ranking a 352 miler at TSR number 18. And yet, when you go through the rankings, it's like
that was one of the hardest. Like 5 through 20 was like, oh no, like you
impossible.
could make a good argument for almost anybody in any of those spots. It was tough.
Really hard. It was really hard because like I sent that out to you guys. You guys were just like, change this, change this, change this, change this. Like, Garrett, quit your job. Like it was all over the place. But I think we got a pretty decent order. Go check those out. We've got previews on the way. I'm trying to work on a few other things, but yeah, just an awesome weekend. Congratulations to everyone who ran. I'm sorry if you didn't get your name here. We're trying, but there was a lot. So 5-star rating review. Go check out the site, and that's all I got.
All right. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.